if you're taking 12% of the fertilizer out of the whole entire agricultural system for the year, and you're reducing herbicides 15% out of the entire global system for the whole year, like what kind of yield reductions are they looking at in the fields? A, from the fertilizer, but B, the competition of the weeds in there, taking the nutrients that would be used to directly go to grain head for corn or wheat or whatever it would be. So you have any idea what the numbers might be in declines based on those two inputs?
Well, probably 15 and 15, 30%.
So the 15 would be a loss from the fertilizer, and then the 15 would be weed control loss. So 30% global reduction in agriculture this year.
Grow bags. That's I've used them for years and years. I've also grown hydroponically in my greenhouse as well, with NFT trays and fancy greens and all kinds of other stuff. But that's what I don't like about that. That's not something you can do with no electricity.
And good afternoon, everyone. Today with me, Dennis DeLaurier. We're going to talk about some different ideas in terms of getting ready, that, things that I'm really falling short of in terms of radio communications. And if you've seen one of our previous interviews, must have been about a year and a half ago.
Oh, yeah.
Dennis also does. Yeah, his website is TheGSMPrepper.com, and the GSM is for Grand Solar Minimum. Now you can see where we sit today. So a couple topics we wanted to cover on Dennis's side: prepping with the food, the water, health and safety. I was talking about how I hit my hand with a hammer just on simple construction, trying to put a table together. Also radio communications, bow phone. What are you going to do I have a CB radio for my car as well, with a 10,000 watt antenna on it. And then greenhouses and getting out almost instant gardens by putting grow bags together. So that's what Dennis's side's about. Me, I'm going to dovetail into that with the fertilizer and the herbicide shortages, where we're going with planetary alignments that are going to cause magnetic disturbances on our planet, i.e. more volcanic eruptions, stranger weather with jet streams, cloud cells. So hopefully, today's talk between he and I will give you some really valuable information in terms of getting ready. And remember, if you want to go to TheGSMPrepper.com, and remember that GSM's Grand Solar Minimum. So Dennis, I appreciate you spending your time with you. We've had a couple good conversations over the last weeks, especially with this incredible cold in areas that are not so used to it, power prices rising, and just, it seems like we're in the year of the change. And, you've been following the Grand Solar Minimum for so many years. You wrote the book down there. Now, I just want to quote it correctly here. Surviving the Grand Solar Minimum is at Amazon. And also in that, you had a lot of prepper and preparation guides to help people along on this journey, because you've been doing it longer, have a lot more knowledge, and you also have that microgreens business. So you really understand greenhouse growing and taking a logical step to turn agriculture into a business, which a lot of people don't. They just grow, they eat, but you have so many different facets of that. So welcome to the show. And leave your comments in the description box below, what you like, what you want to hear more about, what you think we need to expand more on that we didn't. So if we come around for a second show, we can add that as bullet notes. But Dennis, the floor is yours.
Hey, David, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I think you and I have been going at this for, you've probably been going at it more longer than I have, for sure. Like I say, I started, years back with Robert Felix and John Casey and the Ice Age Farmer. And then I ran into your YouTube channel. And then I think we got started. We had kind of a mutual acquaintance, and it was you had written a book with, and he kind of got me introduced to you. And it's we've been what I would consider friends for quite a few years. So anyway, I'm really happy to be back. I've got like I say, I do have a blog now that I'm started. It's called that's THE, and then GSM Prepper. And it's just a blog, and that I have a good time with. And I've recently published 3 blogs on radio communications, which I think is paramount for for a prepper to have equipment and ready to be used, and should practice using it. So I'd like to kind of get into that to start with really quickly, if that's okay.
Yeah. Now, for those of you, my channel, and I I have some gear, but I'm just a beginner at it. So let me show you what I got here. I got the bow phone. You can get this on Amazon, and it came with this standard antenna, which I thought was a little short for different types of range. So I just went online, and then I bought a secondary antenna that still gives you doubling of it actually triples the range, because, when you're talking about antenna length and size here. And then I would be on the mountain behind me. And then also I got an ops antenna here, so you can get something like this. It's foldable, and then it extends out to 3 full feet. And you would see, I even hit the ceiling fan with that. And then you would just connect that there, and then you would have a full, incredibly long antenna that would, extend your range and length. And, to have communications further out is going to be better. So far, I have been able to program in, I'm going to say 6 of my favorites that are local here in East Tennessee that have a lot of traffic on, people just talking daily events or telling you where you can buy different kind of compost manures. There's one that's strictly for agriculture. There's another that's for emergencies. There's one that's for a general chat. There's ones for, conditions for road accidents and sort of thing. And people so I'd like to just drop in and listen. I don't have my operator's license yet. In the motion of it, I have the book, and walk me through some more things. So if somebody else is exactly like me, where do I sit? Where do they sit?
Okay, well, just right off, I can look at your equipment. You have a UHF VHF, a little walkie-talkie or handy-talkie, as they're called. Just from looking at the battery on there, it looks like it's an 8-watter. It's has 8 watts of power. It probably has about 300 different channels or more that you can program. And you're going to learn, you're going to have to probably download some software. Although you can get software for that particular radio, I would submit that you download Chirp. It's spelled just like it sounds, chirp, like a bird's chirp. And it'll program just about any radio on Earth. You need a USB programming cable, okay, that you put into the radio, and away you go. So the other thing is that you're going to need a license for that, David. You can't just use that radio for anything but probably ham radio. It's going to be illegal, and because of the power and the antennas and all that. So, but good news about that is that it's really, really simple to get a ham radio license nowadays. There's like 3 levels. There's technician, general, and extra class. And most people start at the technician class. And as you know, America's been dumbed down. So you can actually just study for the questions, and they give you the answers. So if you've got a memory at all, you can probably pass that test. Although I would suggest that you learn a little more about radio communications and radios. And if you're going to be a ham radio operator, you need to understand that it's a hobby. It's not a toy. Okay. It's not, you can't broadcast music or profanity or anything like that using ham radio equipment. You can't interfere with people. They'll put you in prison for that. It is all radio communications in the United States is controlled by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. One of those 3-letter organizations, governmental organizations. To take the test, what you do is you find yourself a local ham club, okay, and they'll be really, really happy to see you and show up. And probably once a month, they do the test. They made an agreement with the FCC that one person in that ham club who already has their license and all that kind of stuff and has been, vetted, can give you that test. And you'll need a driver's license, arrive with a check, or I don't know what they do nowadays, but you're not, have to pay for it. And then you take the test, and if you pass, one day your little license is going to arrive in the mail, and it's going to have your call letters My call letters, like I say, I've been a ham for 80 years. I'm 88 years old. When I was 8 years old, I got my first radio license. But believe it or not, then you had to know what you were doing. You didn't know what was on the exam. You just studied and had to understand electronics and ham radio and transmitters and receivers, frequencies, all that kind of stuff. And you don't really need to know that nowadays. Like I say, they've dumbed it down quite a bit, but that still doesn't make it valuable. And so you're going to receive that license. And one of the nice things about being in a ham radio operator is there's a lot of inexpensive equipment out there. It totally expands the things that you can do. And I'm gonna talk about some other stuff that you can just go down and buy. Yeah, there you go. That's a good one, David. Yeah, study that. Go find you a ham club. Tell them you want to take your ticket license or take your test. So anyway, that's how you get started in it. But like I say, ham radio opens a huge field of things you can do. Okay, some of the things that I did is I bounced radio waves off the moon. Okay, I've communicated with other hams all over the world, using low frequency radios. I've communicated through ham radio satellites. There's some up there. Mesh networks, that's cool. Okay, you can mesh in all your neighbors if they're okay, and you can. If they have a camera in their location, you can zip into that particular mesh, look at what their camera's seeing, or talk to them, or text them, or all kinds of stuff. Send an email even on a mesh system. So it's endless the things you can do, and so but like I say, what I would suggest is that while we're if you're really really thinking about getting into into radio communications, which, let's face it, if things get tough, you're going to need to know what's going on. Okay. And you're going to need neighbors, and you're going to need a community. And that's where radio communications really kind of combines everything together. Okay. You can't, just go out on the street and holler at each other. They may be, 3 or 4 blocks down the street. So anyway, and of course, the first question people ask about radios is, well, how far can I talk? And maybe that's not the right question to ask. How far can I talk? But
yeah, because talking short range, anytime we're going out or one of us is going up in the fields or going up in the forest, these are 3-mile range here. These are the ones you see on every construction site.
Right.
We have 4 of these that are paired on the same channel, and I custom set the channels so nobody can really drop in. You got 48 different choices on waves. So, I mean, it'd be really difficult. But one thing interesting is when I was playing with the ham radio, I was able to pick up the signal off of this on the ham radio because I knew what it was programmed at.
Right.
So I was able to drop in on a specific frequency on this Baofeng because I knew what this was programmed to. So even, that gives me some options to go super far away and still communicate on these things, even if you're closer. So these are 3-mile range.
Yes.
And, with the 3-foot antenna and the height that you would get, a little bit different. So how do you see it? If the power were to go out and you did not have communications, are you looking for national communication? Are you looking to talk to somebody in a different state? Are you looking to talk to somebody local? I mean, how would you do it? Walk me through the whole, power goes out for a couple of days. And you're like, the news isn't even on. We don't have power. The emergency radio, everybody should have an emergency radio. I have a cranked one where you can listen to the AM, FM, and you can get in on the weather channel. So that's just like the basic of the basic. You need that, but I can't broadcast on that. So where would you go first in case communications are cut and all we are is relying on these different devices here? What are you going to walk me through your scenario of where you would go first, who you talk to first, how you get information first, the first information points that you would dabble into and join the conversation, look for that type of information flow to get you more informed of what's going on regionally and then nationally and then really in the local area. Like you said, with some local repeaters.
One morning you wake up and there's no power. Okay. And for some reason or other, who knows why? Okay. Maybe it's a crap hit the whatever fan thing has happened. Okay. The financial system's collapsed and people are going mad and crazy. and all of a sudden the cell towers go down. There's no electrical power. What on earth are you going to do to actually know what's going on? Okay, so there's three ways to do that. Okay, first of all, you said that, hey, I have a crank radio, and so here my phone's over there doing weird stuff. You have a crank radio, AM and FM radio. Okay, that's the first thing you ought to have, because you're going to get local news that way. Okay, if there are radio stations still up, and a lot of them do have backup power and things like that, you're going to be able to get local news, area news from the radio station. So that would be the first thing that I would get. I would get one of the crank up ones, and that's what I have. I've had it for years, and it works great.
Can I show you my?
Yeah.
All right, so it's just a little small one like this. It includes a light,
yeah,
and then on the back,
a light and a crank.
Yeah, and it has the crank on the back. Yeah, and I leave this hung up in the closet, so even I could stumble to it in the dark, and I could still get to it, because if I can get to this, I have an immediate light source without having to light any candles, and then I can just move from there, because this is about how bright it is here, and definitely instantly you can turn on. You got AM, FM, and the weather channel here, so Again, this got to be in your arsenal too. Not that I'm any expert, but I just know enough that I think that this would be a basic for anybody. And these aren't very expensive either.
No, they're not. Yeah, well, you're step one. You're in there, David. You've got step one.
I'm in the zone.
You're in the zone. Okay. The second thing that you really want to know is what's going on locally. Okay, and I'm not talking, and I'm saying not from a radio station standpoint, but what are your neighbors experiencing? What's going on? Okay, how are they doing? What's happening at their location? Okay, and there's a couple of ways that you can do that. One is I guess that those second radios you brought in here. Those are probably called family radio service radios. Okay, the family radio service is the ones you can just go down to Walmart or wherever and just pick a pack of 2 of them, bring them home, stick some batteries in them, and you've got them, and set it to a channel and maybe even a tone, which we'll talk about what a tone does. But a tone essentially brings the squelch up off the radio and gives you audio if someone transmits. Okay, and so you can bring those home. There's no license required. Your children can use them. Your family, your wife, your uncle, anybody. Okay, and as you say, they're limited range. And the range really is decided on by a lot of things. And one is the antenna. You showed us all those different antennas. So you're doing pretty good in step 2 there. Okay. The problem is that your neighbors are going to have that equipment. Okay. And so what I know this is, you got to be careful, because there's legalities in using radios. Okay. But essentially, if you had 10 or 15 sets of those radios, okay, and you could hand those out to your neighbors, okay, and you could communicate with them. Now, what I've got a little, I don't know if you can see that radio. That is a 12 watt, 16 channel Bofeng or whatever it is. What is it? A B888 or something like that. These things are made like bricks. Okay. You can program them. There's 16 channels and they're great. Okay. Well, I can't use those legally. This is only ham radio operator can use this thing. The reason is I can screw the antenna off, and it's not certified. What is it? Something, I forget what the certification, 95 something or other, the FCC. So you have to certify these radios. They're not certified. So I can't use them except for ham radio operations. But anyway, if I had 20 of these and, everything went to heck, at that point, I don't really care what the FCC wants me to do. Okay. I'm going to have some radio communications because of safety and my family and everybody else. I would probably use these things. Normally, I would not suggest you do that. Do it legally. Okay. Obey the law, because, that's what makes up a country, laws. And everybody breaks the law, then, chaos. So,
can I stop you? Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah.
Then?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So in emergency situation, what is it with the law that would allow a non-operator, licensed person to get on because it is an emergency situation, to be able to broadcast, even though you don't have your call sign, you don't have your operator's license or whatnot?
Right.
So what's the legality issue there? Because in an emergency, the rules are going to change. And is there some leeway there in an emergency for using these devices if you're not licensed?
Yeah. Life and death. That's pretty well sums it up. Life and death. Okay. Nobody's going to, beat you across your brow because, you jumped on a radio that you don't have a license for, and you hollered about some health or some disaster that was going to happen or was happening. I mean, that's not going to happen. Okay. That's why I really, really think, don't worry about that. Get your darn ham radio license. And as you probably heard, it's been so dumbed down now that it's just a memory test is what it is. Okay. But to be really, really good at it in the finishing, you're going to be a super prepper if you get a ham radio license. Okay. And get the equipment. You're going to be so prepped. It's going to be amazing. Okay. So let's go back to this. Hey, there's no power. Well, what are you going to do? Well, obviously, the radio you have, it comes with a battery charger, right? You plug it into the wall. Well, the wall don't work anymore. So you're going to need at least a couple 100-watt solar panels, minimum, I would say, 200 watts of power, a nice battery, okay, that you can charge up, and an AC, a small little 100-watt, 200-watt inverter. Okay, and you can keep all your radios then charged with that using solar power. Okay, that's
I do
really
have a second battery.
Option.
I went out of my way and I bought a second battery for this.
Yeah,
just in case, because if you're up anywhere, you always carry the second battery with you, just like you would in a camera. If anybody does photography, you always have a second battery with you because it might run out. Same thing with communications.
You can probably get a battery charger for your car or truck for that radio there you have. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen those systems. It's an inverter that you put actually on your truck or your car that turns your car into a power station.
Yeah.
Instead of having a generator like you would do a Honda i2200 or something,
right?
Just do the same thing, but your car is the thing that's now the inverter. You got to buy the device and install it.
Well, at home, if you're going to do this at home, you're going to need the panels. You're going to need the battery. You're going to need what are they called? A charge regulator. It makes sure that the battery is, if it's topped off, okay, it quits charging the battery, which can destroy a battery, and it also will shut you down if the battery gets too low. Okay, you need those. I have a couple of them. I have believe it or not, I'm a weirdo, I guess, but I have a Faraday shield or Faraday cage, and I keep backups in that. Okay, so if
you're the smart
one, for some reason, either anyway, I don't want even go there, but like I say, I'm a bit strange, perhaps. But that's prepping. Okay, being ready and being ready for things that might happen that you would never think would happen. And so anyway, so that's the local communications, your neighbors, that's the next level up. Okay, and that's really the most important, actually, if you think about it. It's very, very important to know the welfare of your neighbor, what's happening around you locally, when maybe, with 10 or 15 miles, is there 50 people coming from the city looking for food? I don't know. Well, maybe that needs to concern you. And how are you going to know that? Okay. And if there's no communications, and I can guarantee you, if the power grid goes down, there's not going to be any kind of communications, period. Okay. Unless somebody has backup propane power or diesel or something like that. An example, I live close to Austin, and there's a little town called Round Rock, Texas. And one winter they had a huge ice storm, and it took out the police communication system, just totally. They couldn't talk to their cars or nothing worked. And so the local ham radio community got in there, brought in a base station, put up an antenna at the police station, put ham radio operators in all the cars, the police cars, and they were back in business. Okay, and we had law enforcement on the street, taking care of wrecks and life-threatening things because of all the ice. And so that's kind of what ham radio operators do too. Okay. That's one of the main reasons that actually ham radio exists, is a backup, a national backup safety type of radio system that is done by people who are, pretty well fanatics, about it. I mean, let's face it, I've been doing it 80 years. That makes me a pretty fanatic, I think. And in length anyway. So now that's what we've done. Okay. You've got the local, you're looking for radio stations, FM. You might even get a shortwave radio if you're really, really interested in globally what's going on. Okay. And you can get those with, crank up too, if you want.
Can I interject something in there
Yeah.
on the time duration of that? For those of you out there that don't know, the cell phone towers also have a battery backup on them, but generally it's going to last no longer than 48 hours. Emerson was the main battery producer for those batteries that go into the cell phone towers. And the longest that I'd seen, just on a regular basis, not on a military basis, of course, 72 hours. Yes. So the power doesn't come back on after 72 hours. Even your mobile phone towers are not going to be able to communicate. So if you think, oh, the towers will stay on, I can still use my phone. Yes, to a point, and yes, for a limited amount of time, until those batteries are recharged somehow through the grid if it comes back on. If it doesn't, it's just like anything else, it just runs out.
Yeah. Well, it actually gets worse than that, David. Cell towers use the internet. Okay. Like if I make a phone call in, let's say, Austin, Texas, and I want to talk to someone in Dallas on my cell phone, well, I'm not talking, the only thing I'm using the radio in my cell phone for is to get into that cell tower. Okay. From then on, all the way to Dallas is internet. It gets into Dallas, goes back into the tower. It connects, rings your cell phone if you have it on. And now you're using radio communications again. So it's radio communications up to the tower, from the tower to the internet to where you're calling, and then back up to the tower and to radio to your cell phone. So if the internet's gone down, then cell communications is garbage, and you're out of luck. So
I was not aware of that. That's a nice little factoid.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And on top of that, these cell towers keep track of where you are. They track you. They know where you are. If you're in your car and you're driving along, and your signal to one cell tower is getting weak, okay, there may be another cell tower that's kind of monitoring you, and then saying, hey, my signal into here is stronger than it is to the one you originally were using, and it'll switch you to that cell tower. So that requires communications between the two cell towers over the internet to know what the signal levels are to switch you to that other silly cell tower. So as you can see, it's pretty complex. Okay. It's very, very complex. And so I wouldn't count on a cell phone. Normally if the internet's up and you got power, that's great, but after that, forget it. You're gonna need your own communications equipment. Okay, so we talked about local. You might have a shortwave radio. You have some radio system in your community, your family, your neighbors. Okay, that's all going to be short range, but you're going to know what's going on there. Okay, now the next question is, what's going on in your state? Okay, and again, let's assume we have no electricity. So you can't go onto the internet and, you can get into scanner frequencies for different things. I can listen to the Los Angeles airport if I want. Okay. The traffic going in there over the internet. Okay. Well, you can't do that anymore. You don't know what's going on. So the next best bet is low frequency ham radio equipment. Okay. And these are frequencies from about 80 meters, which is around 3.7 megahertz. Up to maybe 40 meters, which is in the 7 megahertz range. Okay, well, if I have ham radio equipment that covers that and I have the antennas, okay, I can talk all over the state on 40 meters, which is, like I say, around 7 megahertz. At night, that range even gets further. I can talk into Oklahoma, Kansas, And if conditions are really good, I could probably get into New York, even at that lower frequency. Okay. Now, if I want to communicate globally, okay, I need to go up and higher in frequency. And that'll be the 20 meter band and the 15 and the 10 meter band. But normally 20 meters is the best. And on 20 meters, if conditions are correct, 20 meters is around 14 megahertz. Okay. And I have, say, some single sideband equipment, but I can also have, but believe it or not, you can have digital equipment on 20 meters. I can talk to people. I can get on my keyboard and type out text, which is sent digitally over 20 meters to someone else that decodes that, and the text shows up on their monitor. Okay. That's one thing you can do in ham radio. Getting your ham license allows you to actually monitor the whole world. You just have to have the right equipment. The higher up you go in frequency, like the little handy talkie you have, it's the VHF, UHF. Okay, that's 150 megahertz to, in the UHF is 450. That range of megahertz. The higher you get up in frequency, the shorter the range is. Okay, I mean, you cannot talk with those handy talkies anywhere but locally, unless you get into a repeater. And I'm gonna talk about repeaters here in a minute if you want. Okay, but so you've got the start there. You got a radio at home. Okay, you've got your own little personal radio system going on there. You want to talk to your neighbors. You really, really do want to talk to your neighbors. You do really, really want a community, because you can't make it by yourself. If things get really bad, it's just not going to work. Okay, you can't be a Superman, or what is it? You can't be a one-man whatever band, I guess, or a very good one anyway. So that's what I would suggest. Get that darn ham radio equipment, okay, and then practice using it. Now, if you want to, I can. I've got a section on my blog about secure communications. Okay. You got to remember, radio waves go everywhere. Okay. You can't control where they go. You might be able to control the direction they may, you can, an antenna that has a gain and you can point. Okay. But that's the only, but radio waves pretty well, they squirt everywhere. They bounce off stuff and everything else. So if you can afford it for the UHF and VHF, get a digital radio. Okay. And digital radios are the radio systems that the police and the state police and government agencies use for communications. Okay. And most people don't have that kind of equipment. Okay. And especially you can get ham radio equipment. You can pick up a digital handy talkie for about $85 to $90. Okay. That'll do UHF and VHF digital. Now, nobody's going to intercept that. Let's talk about repeaters. That's the other thing. And that's one of the nice things about the equipment that you've bought there, that you can program that to get into local repeaters and actually use them and talk with people instead of just listening. Okay. You're going to need a license to transmit. Okay. Those two radios, you can only listen until you get that license. Okay. So what a repeater does is essentially a repeater is a transmitter and a receiver with an antenna. Usually it's some really high place. They put them on top of towers and all kinds of things. And the repeater transmits and receives at the same time. Okay. But it's an offset frequency. Okay. And that's the way you program. Like, for instance, if you're UHF, your offset is 5 megahertz. In other words, you transmit at one frequency and 5 megahertz over, you listen. Well, it's just the opposite on a repeater. Okay. Okay. So you're transmitting, the repeater receives your signal, retransmits it on a frequency 5 megahertz removed from the received, because you don't want interference between the two. Okay. And you program your little radio there to receive that repeater. Okay. And that's how it works. So essentially, you talk, the repeater receives your signal, retransmits it, and someone hears it. Okay. Then you quit talking and the repeater drops out. The other person keys up his handy talkie or whatever, starts talking. Okay. The repeater receives his transmission, retransmits it, and you hear it. So you can go back and forth. But the nice thing about that is you're looking at 50, 60, depends on how high that tower is. You know, some of these towers get way up there. Okay. I know when I went into New Mexico, I was up at 10,000 feet and I could talk to repeaters. And I was just coming out of Texas into Albuquerque and places like that, just on repeaters that were way up in you know, up in the air, up in tops of mountains and things like that. Okay, so repeaters can extend that, and then on top of that, ham radios have done what they call repeater to repeater. Okay, so they transmit, the other repeater picks it up, it retransmits, it just keeps going, and you end up in California from Texas. Okay, we have some of those here in Texas. I can actually talk to ham radio operators in California directly over radios, not the internet. Okay, there's another little option for my cell phone here. Let me bring it up. And this is kind of cool now, although if the internet goes down, it wouldn't be all that useful. But there is an app. Let's see, where is it? I haven't used it in a while. It's called Echo Link. Okay, you have to have a ham radio license to use Echo Link. But let me tell you how I use this. One day, I was getting ready for a vacation and I was going to be leaving in 2 or 3 days. And I was worried about the weather where I was going. I was going up in the mountains in New Mexico. So I brought up my Echo Link, which is a app. Okay. And it uses the internet. And repeaters in those areas are connected to the internet. So I could get in to that repeater over my cell phone using the internet and then transmit on their repeater locally. And I just got on here and said, this is, you know, K5, blah, blah, blah. You know, anybody around in the blah, blah, blah area that I could talk with. And yeah, some guy pops up. Yeah, what's going on? You know, Dennis. And I said, hey, I'm going to be visiting you. And like I say, this guy's, you know, in New Mexico somewhere. And what's the weather like? I'm wondering, you know, I'm going to be traveling through there. We're going to be doing X, X, Y, Z. What's it like? Well, this guy was glad to tell me that. Okay. Well, that's a ham radio application, uses the internet. But the nice thing about this is that I can use this application to actually talk to a ham radio operator or through a repeater that is anywhere on Earth that the internet can talk to. Okay. If I wanted to use a repeater in Rome, Italy, I can dial up through Echo Link. Okay. And I can key up a repeater, a ham radio repeater in Rome, Italy, and I can talk to somebody locally there I want. And any repeater in any place on the earth that is connected to the internet, I can use their radio system just using my cell phone. It's kind of cool. So
now,
that's just one aspect of ham radio, just one.
Let me ask you, can you pick up and listen to traffic over those same repeaters, or is it is it outbound only, or can you just set up a station, set up a repeater and then just listen?
I can listen to that traffic. Okay. And then, as I said, I would learn as much as I could about ham radio because it's an old thing. Okay. My hero was Marconi. Okay. He transmitted the first radio waves across the Atlantic into the East Coast. Okay. Well, Marconi, would you believe he used a coil and a capacitor and a battery and a key? And, you know, when he put that key down, amps and flashed through that key, man, but it generated enough racket and noise and radio waves, and it was connected to his antenna, and it went all the way across the Atlantic. Okay. And the other guy on the other side used a what? He used a crystal diode radio receiver to receive him. I don't know if you ever had one of those when you were a kid. They have a little galenium crystal with a little cat, you know, thing, and you have a coil and you can tune in radio stations with it. Well, that's what they were using, junk like that. Okay, so that got me going. I liked all the Explorers, you know, and all that. I read all that when I was a kid.
Well, that was Radio Shack Con when you used to be able to go in as a kid and they had just oodles of things. You pulled out those little plastic drawers and you would buy little kits and you could assemble things in Radio Shack. Not the Radio Shack, you know, today, but you could have built stuff back then.
Then, you know, like I say, we've dumbed down really, you know, even though our technology it's tremendous the things we can do with technology nowadays. But the problem is that it takes electricity. It takes takes brains to use and make, and sometimes too. Maybe to get started, most people listening, you might want to get the FRS, the Family Radio System, or the GMRS, which requires an application at the FCC. Okay, and a few bucks, and they'll send you a license. But with the GMRS license, you can actually have a repeater. Okay, you could put a repeater up. Okay, so
on your own property.
On your own property, yeah. Well, you can do that with ham radio too, except you're going to have to talk to the coordinator that coordinates repeaters, because you don't want to use the same frequency, that some local repeater is using. But yeah, you could put one on your own property. But you could go the GMRS route, and all your community, or all your local people that are around you could have GMRS radios, and they could use that repeater. And again, you could run that off solar power too. Okay, so in an emergency and everything goes down, if you put it up high enough on a tower, you could probably get 45 miles of communications distance. So you could have a lot of friends.
Well, think about that. As you having communications when others don't, it's a whole another level up, like having night vision equipment. You can see in the dark when others can't.
Exactly.
It's a huge game changer with night vision equipment.
That's why
not that I have any, but just envisioning it.
Yeah, I have it. And let me tell you, it's a nice feeling to be able to go out in the pitch dark. Okay, it's cloudy, there ain't no stars out, and to put that over your eye and just walk around and, go over and pluck an egg from underneath a chicken, and he won't even know you're there.
So what are your thoughts on CB radios for cars or trucks to be able to have mobile communication?
I was going to bring that up. CB is cool.
It used to be really popular in the 70s. Everyone Breaker 19 for a 1036, all those Smokey and the Bandit movies and all that stuff. Oh man, that was huge in the 70s.
Oh, here's the thing. You can get single sideband CB equipment if you want. Okay. Regular CB equipment is 27 megahertz. Okay. Which is around 11 meters or 10 meters, somewhere in there. Okay. It takes a pretty big antenna, but you can get really nice city communications with that equipment. But no, CB is good. What I don't like about CB is the size of the antenna that you have to put on a vehicle. You get a big old whip, and sometimes it's loaded, which is a coil that makes it shorter. It's called a loading coil. But boy, that's good to have. If your neighbors all had CB equipment, that would be that would be a good idea as well. And again, your neighbors, if they're going to use it though, they're going to need battery backup and all that in an emergency anyway. So I don't know. This is just one part of prepping to me is radio communications. It's knowing what's going on. What's going on, what goes on in your environment all the time. You're not just, stay in your house and sleep and, watch Netflix or something like that. And I'd like to tell one thing to all your friends out there. If they're having troubles with their wife or their husband or their family when it comes to prepping, understand that some people can't take all this, what others might call gloom and doom. Okay. I don't find prepping gloom and doom. I don't. I think it's just being smart. Okay. But a lot of people mentally can't handle it. Okay. My wife is like that. Okay. She cannot take a bombardment of all the things that I'm interested in every day and talk about and blog about, and it's part of my life. She can't take that. And there's a lot of people like that. They just mentally can't handle that. So understand that and go easy. And I'll tell you another thing. I've been at it so long now that I'm actually hearing some of my ideas being reflected back from my family about preparedness. And I'm going, holy mackerel, the other day I heard we ought to have a lot more water around here than we do, because why? Well, it was snow. What did they call it? The Texas big snowstorm we had here. That woke up a lot of people. killed a lot of people.
I think it was called Ice Mageddon, or was some
or
term like that.
You know, Snowmageddon. I think that's what it was.
Does it seem that the awareness of things changing in the economy and the governments and food production and just the stability of society is sort of a sixth sense that a lot of people are picking up on just globally as a survival mechanism of the human itself as a species is picking up on something at a deeper undercurrent that is, cyclically being put out by every single person? That something's picked up where there's an enormous amount of people that are now thinking in a completely different way that they hadn't even a year ago, even though COVID had been rolling around. It's just something recently has sort of tipped them over a bit into completely different thought. Cosmic rays, not sure. Magnetic field anomalies on the planet, not sure. But something is definitely putting a lot of people into, something's wrong. I just don't understand it.
You know, you've heard the word loony, right? You're a loony. Well, that came from lunar, which was people seemed to go crazy when there was a full moon. Okay. And
guilty.
And I'm not
guilty.
Guilty. Right. But I'm just saying people got on edge and all kinds of things. Okay. During that. And when the moon was the largest, the biggest, closest to the earth, things like that. So we don't really understand, I think, our electromagnetic environment too much when it comes to like health and other things. Okay. I don't think we really know that, but I do see an awakening. But what scares me is it's maybe too late eventually for a lot of people. Like I was telling you, I was talking about, I go to Walmart. I supply a lot of pasta for the local food bank for a local church. I'm not even a member. They just have on Saturdays, they hand out free food. Okay. And so I'm always dumping stuff down there to them. And one of the things I like to dump is pasta. Okay. That's a good food for the kids and has a lot of calories. Well, we haven't had pasta on our local Walmart shelf for 2 weeks now. 2 weeks. There's no, and I'm not talking about boxed pasta, which is a whole lot more, the fancy stuff that nobody buys hardly. I'm just talking about the regular cellophane wrapped, pasta. There haven't been any there. And so yesterday or 2 days ago, I talked to one of the guys that worked there. I said, "Hey, what's going on with the pasta?" And he says, "Yeah, well, there's a shortage of it." And he says, "It's not just at this Walmart." He says, "It's also at other local stores. You can't get any cellophane wrapped up pasta anymore, like spaghetti and things like that, or bags of, I don't know. There's all kinds of weird ways they, you can get pasta. Not there." And I think that's waking people up. I go through the grocery store and I'm seeing things. I'm just seeing more and more junk and less food. Okay. In these stores. So I think that's waking people up. But what scares me is that, and you and I have been on this, 2023 kick for a long time. I think that's really when people are going to wake up, and it may be too late to be, all these things we're talking about, radio prepping, having medical gear at home, and actually practicing it. I'm lucky. I have 2 nurses in my, in my family. My wife is one, and my daughter-in-law, and all the other things that goes into, taking care of yourself, which are like water. You got to have water, and then there's food, and then there's health, and then there's safety. And then I think on top of all that, there's community. Okay. And that all, and, you need to know your neighbor. You need to know who your friends are. You have to, and people seem to kind of move around off from that. They're afraid of each other. People are afraid of people. Okay. And that's why I really don't think that personally, I've got some on my blog. It says 1 out of 10 is going to make it through this, and the rest are just going to be afraid, and they're going to be in their box waiting for somebody to come by and rescue them.
Yeah, we've been taught as other humans are competition to you.
Exactly.
But in the schooling system, that person sitting next to you is going to take your job.
Yeah.
or something. And with the wake up calls going on, if you haven't seen the lockdowns where they're welding people into their buildings again in Xi'an this time, we saw the same thing in Wuhan. You see the collapse over in Turkey. You see the collapse happening in Kazakhstan. And you could talk all day long about Venezuela and Zimbabwe, but at what point do people go, I wonder if that could come to a country near us? Because, those sort of scenarios had been limited only to, once a decade, just a chapter in history, once a decade, something went erroneously wrong, like Zimbabwe or Venezuela. Now you got 4 or 5 of these things happening at the exact same time right now. Where think about the stories coming out of Xi'an, the city that's having a double outbreak, or there's some kind of retrovirus and the SARS and the regular COVID happening all at the same time. So they're welding people in their buildings, and the food's running out. So people are starting to barter and trade inside the buildings. So you start to see how people can self-organize if they need to, because they can't escape. See, if they could escape, they would probably be stealing from their neighbors. But because they're all locked in there, you steal from your neighbor, everybody's going to know, and you're going to have to deal with that. So, it's just a different thing. Like, how many times do we need a wake-up call here? How fast did Kazakhstan collapse? 24 hours? They had nothing, no ATMs. And the people are always talking about crypto and say, well, if the electricity goes down, you'll have no crypto, huh? Well, the same thing. There's no ATMs, there's no banking, there's no internet, the power's off, and then nobody has access to finance. No credit cards, no debit cards work. You got gold, silver, and fiat, and whatever else is tradable right now in Kazakhstan. And that looks like it's poised to continue for quite some time, another couple of weeks before things return. At what point do you say, there's 5 instances of this thing happening on the planet right now, when it used to be once a decade? Now there's 5 in a single span of a month. Well, what's going on here? Because Turkey, the collapse of the currency, I mean, what's going to happen in any country where the currency collapses? We already seen it. So it could be a little distant wake-up call for a lot of people to start to get more ready. Nobody's coming to rescue you. You said it, you hit it on the head. There's no cavalry coming. You take your own autonomy and self-sufficiency, or you end up in a camp, perhaps.
Let's face it. It's those 5 things that, it's the water, the food, the security, your health, the security, and then there's community. And if you lose that, you've lost it. You've lost it. And that's why there's so many opportunities now. You could build you could have a greenhouse business now. You know what? You can't find greenhouses anymore on the internet. They're all sold out. They're sold out. So if you could somehow and you can buy the equipment and start building greenhouses and selling them, you'd have a nice business. That's a good, grand solar minimum business right there. Being a nurse, security. I could probably, if I started thinking about it, I could come up with 20, 25, 30 different things that would make really, really good businesses during the grand solar minimum, and food shortages and things like that. Can you fix a car? Can you shoe a horse? We have 2 horses out here. This guy comes out, or this young girl comes out and does all the horse stuff, and checks the horse out and puts the horseshoes on and all that kind of stuff, does the hooves, and so they're, I think you can be gloom and doom all day, but you really, really need to talk about the possibilities, of what's coming, the opportunities, how you're going to get through this. And it's not going to be sitting in a black box somewhere, eating, as I always say in my blog, eating pizza and beer. And then one day someone knocks on your door, and that your life ends, is the way you know it anyway. And it doesn't have to be that way. It can be wonderful. It's amazing what the human spirit can do. If you just make up your mind. And what I think is really fascinating is that, let's say that you had an auditorium and you had 10,000 people in there. And if you ran some guy up there with a microphone and he said, I'm interested in X, Y, Z, and I want to make this the best X, Y, Z I could ever make. All of a sudden, you'd have about 40 or 50, 100 people come running up there, and say, man, I'm into that too. Let's do it. Okay. Well, that's what we need. We need people that are, let's do it people. You know, you can't be afraid like those people in that elevator going up and down. And I'm sorry, I don't see that, but maybe we're going to wake up one day and we're going to do things like that. You know, the human spirit is going to take over, and it's going to say no. You know, that's a powerful word. No. What does that mean? You know, no.
You know, staying on the food aspect, I'd like to pick your brain because you used to have the microgreens business. You just mentioned greenhouses,
Right.
that the plug and play kits you can't really buy anymore. So you're going to have to get your own cattle panel and put up your own framing and then run the 6mm poly over that, or maybe even double layer it and get a blower in there. Okay. That's doable. It's a skill set. Once you learn that, you can do it everywhere.
Right.
But you had mentioned grow bags before we talked here, you know, a couple of days ago. You were talking about the fastest way to put up a garden, grow bags. Since you have this experience growing in greenhouse with the, with the ventilation and with the irrigation, nutrition, liquid fertilizers going through. So if I have nothing today and suddenly I come into a greenhouse, like my neighbor's old carport, they thought, oh, we don't need that anymore. You know, we could convert it into a greenhouse pretty quickly. How would I then fill it with something that would put food in my body? I know microgreens are awesome, but you know, you're using the seed. Eventually you're going to have to bring something to seed, which we did all last year, kept experimenting, bringing things to seed, drying it out, planting to get it again, trying to get a second generation out of the seeds, especially beans and things. But walk me through that whole thing. What grow bags? Because that was one thing I kept, I need more grow bags. I got about 30 or so, but we probably need more.
Yeah, you need 500 or 600 probably to start. Anyway, they're not that much. Grow bags, you can buy them in bulk for, I don't know, 40 cents a piece. And if you're very careful, you could probably get a couple seasons out of them. I don't particularly like the felt grow bags. Okay, they're too expensive to start with. And, you know, like I say, if you're careful, you can use it. But anyway, a grow bag.
You're talking about plastic. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're talking about plastic, not felt, because the felt, they have those handles on it. And there's a lot of seepage out of there when you irrigate or when you water that.
Yeah. You know, if that floats your boat, go ahead. But I can get a whole lot more grow bags for a lot less money. And, you know, a lot of people don't like plastic, but if I'm hungry, I'm going to love plastic if it's going food. But so anyway, I use 5 or 6 gallon grow bags. Okay. And I think I showed you that one picture of my greenhouse.
You did. It was amazing.
Last year with all the tomatoes. Well, anyway, if you don't have a garden, you started late, you say, oh, I need to prep. I need to get going here. I need to start growing my own food. Okay. Well, yeah, you can go out and you can, you know, get a shovel. And I don't believe in digging into the soil in the first place. I think that's crazy. Okay. I believe in no dig gardening. Okay. If you're going to garden at all. But even a quicker way, an instant way, is to get yourself 50 or 60 grow bags. They're 5 gallons. Okay. They have holes in the bottom. You fill them up with good compost and soil or whatever you can get your hands on. Okay. And then you plant things in them. You start your starts, you put your starts in there. The nice thing is that you can put them close together. There's no weeding. Okay. There's none, hardly any at all weeding. Okay. You can regulate the water. Water doesn't evaporate like it does into the ground. You know, you dump gallons and gallons of water into the ground and it just goes all over the place. Well, in a grow bag, no, that's not going to happen. So you can regulate it. And you would say, oh, well, you know, you might, doesn't the water kind of pour out of the bottom of the green? No, it doesn't. If you're watching what you're doing, okay, you can see when you've watered it enough. And the nice thing about a grow bag is it sucks gobs of oxygen down to the roots of the plant in that bag. Okay, you've got a grow bag which is it's a foot and maybe a foot and a half tall. Okay, that plant is going, and that soil is going to be nice. Really nice, and it's not going to be solid like you go out someplace, you can't dig but 3 inches down, and then you got to get some sort of machinery in there, before you can grow anything in it. Well, not in a grow bag. So those roots are going to go all the way to that bottom, and they're going to be looking for water down there. Okay, and then when you put water in there, you're sucking a lot of oxygen down into those roots. Okay, so that's one of the advantages of a grow bag. The other is it's instant. Okay, I can go out to the store if it's still open. I can give me a lot of compost sacks. You can fill up the grow bags with sacks of compost. Okay, and then I can start my garden. Okay, another thing is it's efficient space wise. Okay, if I want, I could make the grow bags in a circle. I always wanted to do that, so I kind of like walk around, in this kind of matrix or circle of grow bags. That'd be kind of fun. Okay, you can hand water them if you want. You don't need a drip system. If you have fertilizer, you can just mix it up in a watering can and go around water and fertilizer their stuff if it needs it. You can, the plants, I think, respond more. You can tell what the plant's doing a lot better than when it's in the ground. Okay, sometimes you just don't know what that plant needs, or if it's happy or not, or if it's going to be productive or not. But if you can get in there close up and inspect that plant, which is off the ground, hey, that's another advantage, isn't it? Okay, especially at my age, 88. I mean, I'm going to be 89 this year. Okay, and I don't like to bend over on the ground, and I don't like to dig with a shovel. Okay, I'd rather just, get my little foldable military spade out and fill it up with compost, and start my starts in my greenhouse. Start them early in the spring, because that's the nice thing about a greenhouse. You want to start your starts and make those starts as big as possible, especially with squash, because of squash beetles. Okay, get that plant huge. Okay, and then take him in and plunk him down in that grow bag, and he's going to just take off instantly. Okay, the other thing is if you really want to be efficient, say you have a small patio or something, you could make a stair steps. Okay, it'd be stairs that are maybe 6 foot across and 3 or 4 layers up. Those stair steps, you could put grow bags in there. Okay, and you could, you would put all your tall growing plants in the back and short growing plants in the front. Okay, and so you could have a complete garden in a home built staircase type of thing. You could be growing your herbs and your tomatoes in the back, and maybe some of the squash on the side that are kind of runner squash, and that's another thing that I like. I think squash are an ideal plant, especially like something like a Waltham that will store 6 months after it's grown. Okay, you can keep it in your house for 6 months later. Indians did this for years. Okay, they used to grow tons of squash. They dig a hole in the ground. Okay, they had a lady that cut it all up. They sun dried it, and they put it in these root cellars, and along with corn shucks and all kinds of other stuff. And that's how they survived in the winter. Okay, so you can do the same thing with the winter squash. You can that stuff will feed you all winter. And when you run out of the last one about 6 or 7 months later, you got some more out there growing. So a grow bag is ideal. No weeding. Okay, it's focused watering. Okay, that's primarily the biggest. Well, the ease of use, an instant garden, and focused watering are the I think the best thing. And if you know somebody going, oh, I never grew a garden in my life, well, get online, order you some. Let's see, I think, what do I use? Greenhouse Mega Store. I think that's who I use for my Greenhouse Mega Store. And I order 5-gallon black plastic grow bags. You can, and if you don't have a garden and you say, well, geez, I'm old, or my back hurts, or I'm overweight, and I don't want to get out there with a shovel and do all these crazy things that people do in gardens, use grow bags. Okay, instant garden. So that's kind of where there's other ways of doing it. I'm also into Ruth Stout gardening, okay, which is a no dig. Okay, it uses hay and compost. You just grow in hay and compost. You want potatoes? It's really easy. You go out, 100-foot long strip, 3 foot wide. Okay, you put a bunch of compost down, Okay. You get your potato starts, you cut them up and they got eyes and all that. Drop them down that sucker and maybe cover them a little bit with the compost and put about a foot or two of hay on top of it and keep it watered. And you'll have all the potatoes you'd ever want. No digging. Okay. You know the craziness people go through with potatoes? You've seen it on YouTube probably. They dig down, man, they got this dirt, and then as the potato comes up and then they dump some more dirt on it, and then it comes up a little more and they dump some more dirt. Well, that's crazy. Just insane. Okay. I'm actually right now, I've got potatoes left over from last year that are getting ready to sprout that I'm going to plant this year. Okay. So, potatoes, that's another good one. Okay. Squash potatoes, dried peas, dried beans, and all these things you can grow in a grow bag. You could grow corn if you want. Just,
yeah. So let me ask you, let me interrupt you there with the potatoes. So how thick is your compost when you're running? So let's say you're running 100 foot, it's going to be 3 feet wide. You run it 100 foot. How much initial compost do you put down? Then you put your starters in more compost, and then a foot of hay or more. Are you putting a bed of straw or something down there first before you put the compost on it, or walk me through that? I'm trying to envision it in my mind here.
Well, what I hate weeds. Okay. And I live in Weed City. Okay. Let's face it. I've given up. Weeds have kicked my butt. Okay. And that's being kind. There's nothing I can do about weeds out here because I have on the other side of my farm, our farm over here, we have grass that they grow that clumps and puts out zillions, if that's a number of seeds, and they blow all over here. So I don't care what I do. Okay. So what I do is I put down a small layer of newspaper. Okay. And then I put the compost on top of it. And then I put the hay, and that's it. And it's really kind of cool because at the end of the season, when you're harvesting, all that hay is composted down and it went from about 2 feet to about, 4 or 5 inches. That's what it's going to do. And you're going to end up, and then you're going to harvest all your potatoes. It's easy. You don't have to dig. You just, I get in there and, I can get in there with my hands and harvest them if I want. Okay. In fact, I do sometimes. I want some little baby potatoes. I'll just go out there and put my hand underneath the hay, and I'll pick me enough for a quick meal. Okay. So that's the best way. It really is. It works. It's been proven over and over and over. And like I say, the growing the potatoes, you can actually grow everything, like I just talked about with a potato system. Okay, with the compost and the hay, just keep adding hay. Her answer was people. She would go to seminars, and she did dress fully when she went to those, by the way. And they would ask her, "Well, what do you do about weeds?" And her answer was, "Add more hay." And then she would go to another, and then go back to the same bunch of people. Okay. And be talking about, gardening and stuff. What do you do about hay? And you say, well, didn't you hear me last time? You just add more hay. And that's what you do. You just keep adding hay. And eventually what happens is I made the mistake when I first came out here on this farm was using a tractor and plowed up my land. And I brought up seeds that were probably, 10 years old. And they were just waiting for some water. Okay, because they were down embedded in all that hard soil, and it was horrible. And it was never, I never got over that. I plowed that land and I never got over the weeds ever. But that may be my circumstance here, but that's kind of what it's all about as far as weeds go anyway.
So you're telling me that you can grow anything in that kind of hay bale system then?
Yes.
So anything will throw roots down in there. Are you talking about leafy greens as well? I mean, you're able to do lettuce in that?
Yeah, you do. Let's, there's some common sense about this though. It's not.
I'm not very commonsensical. We used to
I'm not either.
shipping a pallet to do greens like that.
That's why I read a lot. Okay. Cause I'm, I don't have the answer to everything. So and it's out there somewhere. Essentially what you do in a bed like that is you put it down. And a lot of people, when they make a Ruth stout garden, wait 6 months, okay, before they grow anything. So they let nature take its, its play, it's whatever it's going to do. And, the newspaper will compost, the weeds will compact down and start, composting too. And then, so what you do, if you wanted to do lettuce, okay, now, if you know how little lettuce seeds are, well, what you could do is you part that back, you put your seeds in there, okay, and you kind of cover them up and you keep them nice and damp until they pop up about an inch or two. And then you just push the hay back kind of next to it and a little over it. And finally, it'll just pop up to that hay. Now, if you're going to grow starts, like, a lot of times I grow like tomato, pepper, and other kinds of starts, I'll grow those as large as I can. And then I get me one of these augers for my drill. Okay. And I drill my holes out with a little drill auger. And then, put the start in there, bring all that compost back around that plant, and then heap the hay up around it as much as I can. Okay. And then just, water it when I need it. And that's Ruth Start, or that's the way she farmed for years. And, it looks like, it doesn't look like a very pretty garden, just a bunch of, weeds almost, or not weeds, but hay all over the place. But it's very, very prolific. And if you keep doing that year after year after year, what your soil is going to be like. Okay, it's just going to get better and better and better. And so that's kind of the way I got a garden out here like that. Go to my blog. I've got pictures of all that stuff. And
yeah, well, and one question about that.
Yeah.
Are you talking about hay or are you talking about straw? Because, I know there's a fine difference, and I've been questioned about that a few times.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the thing. You have to be careful with anything you put in the ground in a garden nowadays because of weed killer. Okay. And so you want to if you can, get your hands on, if there's such a thing on this earth anymore, called organic hay. Okay. If you go out and get wheat, stubble and stuff like that, you have to be careful about how that farmer grew that crop or that hay. A lot of people. And so I'm lucky enough. I have a horse farm across the street. Okay. They keep, 80, 90, 100 horses for the state of Texas. And they're really finicky about what they feed their horses. Okay. And so they don't want their horses eating hay that had, weed killer and all kinds of stuff in it. So I get some pretty prime horse poo. Okay. But and they buy hay there, and I get a lot of that hay too, just waste hay. Because I don't know if you ever noticed a horse, they waste hay like crazy. Okay. It just goes everywhere. And I get a lot of that. So I'm using that. I went to a hay dealer here in Central Texas, and said, "Hey, I want some organic hay that doesn't have any weed killer or anything, used around it, Roundup and that sort of stuff." And he said, "Sir, I cannot even guarantee you anything that I sell doesn't have it in it." Okay, so you have to be careful about your source. And as far as using hay and like wheat stubble and things like that, those work just as well. They work just as well. The stubble doesn't break down as quickly as the hay does. Okay. Hays are, like you say, they're grasses, and you have to be careful what kind of grass. Okay. But I'm talking about regular grass that I guess I could look up some names of the grasses, but
field grass.
Yeah. So you have to be careful, or you're going to end up with seeds in that. But that was another thing that they always asked Ruth Stout. What about the seeds in the blah, blah, blah? And she said, add more hay, just add more hay. The seeds are going to they're going to drop down into the bottom down there, and they're not going to see any sunlight. Okay, probably. And, and the seeds are just going to go the way most seeds go when you compost them. So I'm not saying that's the answer, so I don't know. But I love my grow bags. Let me tell you, I can grow anything in them. Okay, just anything, any kind of herb you could ever dream of, I can grow in a grow bag. And you can grow corn, and you can grow squash and peppers, and what else do you want? I guess you could grow. I mean, I use grow bags a lot of times to start fig tree starts and stuff like that. Just poking them in that and letting them root. But so anyway, grow bags, don't write that off. Look at it. I've actually, like I say on my blog, I think I even have something on that, or videos. I have a download of some of my old blogs that I don't know. It's about 450 pages long. You can download. Okay, it's my original surviving the Grand Solar Minimum Prepper blog I had, and I took down one year, but I saved it all as a PDF, and you can download that. But anyway, grow bags, that's it. That's the way to go, especially if you don't have a garden right now. Okay, you want one in the spring, and you don't want to get out, and you don't have a big yard, and you just don't want to get out there with a tractor and plant something, or get a shovel and start digging. And hey, you might live in one of these neighborhoods where the lady comes by and checks your house and make sure you don't have any weeds in your yard. Well, maybe she wouldn't care if you had grow bags, on your patio growing. It's kind of like flowers, right? So these what are those called? Home something, I forget. I never lived in one, but
that have their own
regulations. Yeah,
but I own my house.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't. Well, we can take your house if you don't paint it the right color. Grow bags. That's I've used them for years and years. I've also grown hydroponically in my greenhouse as well, with NFT trays and fancy greens and all kinds of other stuff. But that's what I don't like about that. That's not something you can do with no electricity. Okay, grow bags. Yeah, you could, it'd be a lot of work, but you could water 400 grow bags. That would take a while.
And I think about also the fertilizer shortages coming in too.
Right.
So you could target the usage of the fertilizer much more succinctly than
Well,
putting it out
absolutely.
even in the rows, because there's going to be a lot of washout, and it'll just go to
Right.
places that it's not used.
Well, we have chickens. Okay, so I use a lot of chicken manure. So that's pretty cool. That works really well. That's good fertilizer. And
It is. Yeah. We cleaned out the chicken coop when we were putting out the garden there, and just kind of breaking down the chicken coop a little bit to try to revert and turn it into a greenhouse. It's still under production,
Right.
but that chicken manure just, everything took off so fast. You could see where it was on the garden in some place, and then other places didn't produce as greatly, but
Right.
where the chicken dung was, for sure. Now there's going to be a lot more people looking for these types of things too. These farmers right now are being pushed and pinched because they can't get chemical fertilizer. So almost everybody is looking for additional composting, manures, etc. So if you think you might be able to secure some now, it'd be a good idea, because as we come into the planting season, it's going to be the run on runs that you've never seen anything. It's going to shake the core of our societies, because the food is not going to be grown as much. So I have a quick question for you then. Maybe you can help me out with some numbers here. So far, it looks like there's going to be a 12% decline globally in fertilizer availability for this year moving forward. And at the same time, the herbicides, now, you got the two classes of herbicides. You got the grasses, and then you got the broadleaf. So grasses are the things that are running up and down in corn rows mainly. So what's that? Accent Q and Roundup. And there was another one that's mainly for grass.
Right.
But then you got all those other, groups of chemicals for broadly, like group 27, group 2, group 4, that the USDA is recommending farmers shift to instead of using Roundup.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be a 15% or more decline not available for the farmers. So if you're taking 12% of the fertilizer out of the whole entire agricultural system for the year, and you're reducing herbicides 15% out of the entire global system for the whole year, like what kind of yield reductions are they looking at in the fields? A, from the fertilizer, but B, the competition of the weeds in there, take in the nutrients that would be used to directly go to grain head for corn or wheat or whatever
Mm-hmm.
it would be. So you have any idea what the numbers might be in declines based on those two inputs?
Well, probably 15 and 15, 30%.
So the 15 would be a loss from the fertilizer, and then the
Right.
15 would be
Yeah.
weed control loss. So 30%
Right,
global
exactly.
reduction in agriculture this year.
And it's going to get worse over the years, of course. Okay. They're going to finally use up that soil, so there's no microbial life in it at all. Okay. And that's really the big problem why we have to have fertilizers to start with. Essentially, our farmland has become hydroponic. It's essentially holds the plant root. That's all it's good for. And it holds the fertilizer, but that's it. Okay. The roots aren't getting much out of the soil at all. It's all from the fertilizer. So, we've essentially ruined the whole damn earth. I'm sorry to use that word, but that's kind of what we're doing to our soils. We're ruining the earth, and we're taking all the microbial life out of it, and we're replacing it with synthetics, which are not sustainable at this point. And I think it's going to get worse. Okay. And, my recommendation is, if you're at home, get some chickens, start composting. Okay. And this idea that you can feed the earth sustainably is a fairy tale. Okay. You can't, it's just not possible. Okay. Yeah. We have 8 billion people. Okay. Permaculture cannot feed this earth. Okay, I love permaculture. I've studied it. I've taken courses. People say, oh, it's organic. You got to go organic. Well, yeah, but can you feed 8 billion people? And then they say, well, let's go hydroponic and put it in, 22-story buildings with LED lights. And, well, can you live on lettuce? Trying to grow corn in there or wheat, it's not going to happen. So we live in a kind of we live in interesting times, to quote a curse. Okay. And so I think it's really going to have to get down to the individual in the community. And at that point, yes, you can feed people. You can feed people at the community level. Okay. But everybody's going to have to pitch in. It's kind of like when I look back on my grandparents and my great grandparents. Okay. Is my grandparents, they had a garden, they had a cistern. Now, this is in modern times with telephones and electricity and gas and everything else. Okay. But they had a cistern, they had a pig. Okay. They had a garden, they had chickens. Okay. They had a big black 35-gallon old pot that they boiled water in with lye soap and washed all the sheets and everything in, and the underwear and everything. Okay. They had a wash tub. Okay. Well, none of that took electricity, nothing. Okay. So you could get your water, you could grow your food, you could get your eggs, and you could eat a chicken every once in a while. And you had a pig. And by the way, my grandfather also had a smokehouse. Okay. So he had smoked ham and bacon and stuff like that. Okay. Well, that was my grandparents. Now, my great grandparents, it would have been worse. Okay. They would have had to live in a world where, their grocery stores didn't have much,
Frontier stores.
Yeah. Frontier stores, you absolutely had to take care of yourself. You had to have good water. You had to take care of your health. You had to make sure you didn't cut yourself. And if you did, you did something about it. There weren't hospitals and ambulances and 911 and police protection and stuff like that. Well, we may go back to that. Okay, so that's how you need to think about what's coming. Okay, and all that can be mitigated by community. That's the answer. And if there's no community, then you're on your own. And boy, that's tough. That's tough to do on your own. Okay. I don't see a lot of people. Now, most people don't have the, what is it, constitution or whatever, the fortitude, that's the word. And they don't have that. It's lost. Okay, we've lost that. We walk around and run into telephone poles with cell phones. Okay, that pretty well sums up society. Okay, we've always had grocery. I mean, I look at myself. I can't remember when there wasn't a grocery store. Okay, I can remember when we had crank telephones, but I used to get sent to the grocery store on my bicycle to pick up stuff at the grocery store. Okay, so I never lived in a time when everything you had to do was for yourself. You had to do it yourself. But I look back on my relatives. My in South Dakota, I had relatives that were farmers. Okay, I saw how they grew things, how they did things. I saw my grandparents, how they did things, and I learned from that. I remembered all that. Okay, and we didn't have pesticides or Roundup in the garden. You went out and you weeded the garden, and if there were bugs, you picked them up and you fed them to the chickens. Okay, so I don't know. Anyway, that's like I say, I think what we're seeing coming with shortages, I think a lot of those are man-made. We're inflicting it. We're shooting ourselves in our feet, in our foot. Okay, and a lot of this stuff. Okay, and a lot of it is going to be because of the grand solar minimum cooling and other things like magnetic poles shifting and weakening, and our jet streams going nuts and all that other all the stuff that we could spend another 3 or 4 hours talking about if we wanted to. And I see fertilizer and weed things that you use for weeds is I guess there's was there pre-emergence type things you can spray, that kill things as they just pop up, and all these other
that's all
things.
Roundup Ready GMO type of thing. You're talking pre and post emergence there. So that activator, that enzyme activator that's inside, like Roundup, for example, those seeds are targeted for. And this is the thing, again, this could be the wild card here. Getting the seed in the field to grow it on what we consider a seed in the field. But a lot of those seeds going in on the mega biz there, on the agribiz that has, 100,000 acres, 50,000 acres, 17,000 is a small farm.
Yeah.
They're using GMO activated ready seeds. So if you don't have that Roundup, those seeds don't activate. So you might have all the seed supply in the world, but if you don't have the chemical to activate it, then, we're talking to a whole nother level up here of crop losses.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say losses, I should reduce yields would be a better term.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure some of that'll come up, but not as much as it used to.
Oh, no, not even close, because they use it. And then the weed suppression on that and the pre-emergence, what you're talking about.
Right.
Who knows what's going to happen moving forward? Because it seems like the USDA is pushing farmers from chemical fertilizers to manures and different kind of compost. Well, that's already been kind of sourced out. There's really nothing left.
No.
Yeah. And I'm trying to get some compost and things like, 20, 40 tons. And I'm having a little difficulty sourcing that. And then you move right over into the herbicides, and they want to have everybody kind of shift away from the Roundup and the Accent Q, and those other things are going real low right now, into those different group chemicals and try to mix them to get the same effect that Roundup would do. Because, those other group chemicals, if you don't know, they only affect a single metabolic function of the plant. So some will inhibit chlorophyll production, others will inhibit amino acid production. So then the way you mix the chemicals too, you need to mix them in a certain order, but then you're going to have to reapply because they're not as strong as things like glyphosate. So when they start to do, the US, and then they're saying you can only do it on small weeds. There's no more large weeds. Before they used to broadcast on large weeds too. They're like, you have to prepare your fields, go in and knock out all the large weeds first, then come through and then apply. sparingly, no less.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
So how much extra fuel and time is that going to be for a farmer with, 50,000 acres to go through and knock down the large weeds that they're going to be planting in areas when they used to just roll through and broadcast spray across the board there. So now the USDA wants them to go target the larger weeds that were left over, or, ironweed, for example, is a super rough one to get through, and go cut those down first, whatever method you use, and then apply versus just applying. Because large weeds they're trying to retrain farmers' brains that large weeds are you can't do anything with small weeds only. And you got to play chemistry set and go mix a bunch of stuff to try to replicate what glyphosate did. So even this first year of trying to figure this whole mix out of the ratios, what types of, because grasses, again, most of those group chemicals aren't specifically targeted for grasses. They're more, those leaves with big leaves on them, broad leaves. They're not grasses like you're talking about, straight up and down grass plants.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching and learning curves and mistakes and finding better ways to do things here as we come through this first year. But I think hopefully they would have figured out the efficiencies and gotten it wired down by year 2, which is 2023. If you're going to look there, the news landscape, I'm going to give you a specific word here. Look for the word anhydrous. You've probably never heard that word before. A lot of you out there, it's a type of fertilizer, and urea. These are going to start making the mainstream MSNBC news conversations here. Yeah. Coming up at the end of the month into February, right when everybody's getting ready to plant. So how long is it going to be before the fertilizer shortages hit the mainstream news like MSNBC, and mom and pop and mama bear understands that food prices are going to double again, and wait, then that might not be available, and we're going to get a lot of reductions here from not a lot of fertilizers. At what point is that rollover panic point going to hit where suddenly, it's regular shopping, and then within a week the stores are stripped because everybody understands you get it now because you're not going to get it later. We're coming into something like this around May of this year. The awareness of the chemical and the fertilizer shortages on how that's going to push agriculture yields down is going to be fully aware, and probably water cooler talk no later than May of this year. And then how will that, shift society and the way people behave? I don't know. Well, there are some carryover stocks, but how much can you dig into those before you just drive prices to the moon? Are you talking $20 corn?
Well, I think we're going to places where we've never gone before. Okay, I think isn't that what Star Trek says? Going places. I forget what it was. Anyway, exploring things and meeting new people we've never met before or seen before. That's kind of where society is going right now. Okay, we're going from one crazy thing to another, and people, I think, are going to have to realize that we live in an era of change. Okay, now I personally love change because I go crazy if I'm not doing something different all the time, or learning something, or reading something, or whatever. I go nuts if I have to sit somewhere and not do anything. Okay, and so change, I like change. I can adapt to it, but a lot of people can't, or don't even know that they can. And I think that's where we're headed. We're headed to, new frontiers, so to speak, where it's going to change until it works. And that's the problem, is how much change is it going to take before it does work? Okay, and what is that? Is that a reduced population? Is it a new way of, eating? Is it a new way of growing food? What is that? What is that new way that's going to work? And I don't think we really completely know yet where that is. And like I say, the only thing I can recommend to anybody that's worried about something like that is, do the best you can. Take care of yourself, look after yourself. Get a community. Grow your own food, take care of your health, lose some weight, exercise, start a new business. Okay. All my life, I always went into new businesses. Okay. I was a technical writer for a while. I was an electronic technician. I was even a janitor at one time when things were tough. I had to go out and get a job cleaning toilets. But I knew that was just the next step into something that I really wanted to do. Okay. And I think that's what we're going to have to do now. People are going to have to clean the toilets and do things they don't want to do until they get to some place where they want to be. And if they don't, they're going to quickly, find out that there's not going to anybody that's going to come in and bail them out. And they're just going to be a burden on everybody else. Okay. And to me, that's the worst thing I think I could ever be to somebody, is be a burden to them. Okay. That I couldn't contribute, that I couldn't make their life better by my efforts. Okay. And, unless we start thinking like that, there's going to be a lot of people that just won't make it. Okay. They're going to want the government to keep sending those checks, and they're going to continue to want to go down to Walmart and buy the pasta that's not there anymore. And, that sort of stuff, and drink the beer and eat the pizza and use their cell phone and watch Netflix. That's not life. At least that's not my life anyway, that I'd ever want. And so that's what I think we're going to have to do. We're going to have to go through a lot of things, and we're going to finally have to find out what works. Okay. And I'm all open to that. And that's kind of why I write my blog. Okay. I was always looking for new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things, awakening people, saying, hey, look, there's more to life than, getting stuck on traffic on Interstate 35 every day. Okay, that's a horrible life. I've often done that. When I was my microgreen business, I used to run around in my truck delivering restaurants microgreens. And it seems like every light in the world was set to make me stop. Okay. And I'm going, do I really want to be doing this? What about that hour I spend every day just sitting behind my car, burning hydrocarbons? Is that really what I wanted? And I finally came to the conclusion it wasn't. Anyway, that's kind of where I am
your global
now.
carbon tax, you polluter.
Yeah, they're going to get out. And well, they can't tax me anymore for that. That's for sure.
You're going to have to pay a non-usage tax because you no longer want to drive an automobile.
There you go. That'll solve it.
Yeah,
well, I often laugh. I'm going that, have you ever seen these children that are growing up nowadays? I said, they're going to be our leaders, but there's not an app for that. There's not an app on the phone for being a leader. So,
hey, before we sign off here, Dennis, give me a 2022 prediction. Because my whole thing is fertilizer shortages, herbicide shortages. It will hit around May on the global news feed, and at that point, there's going to be some sort of panic trip where everybody's going to understand, and they're not going to buy double or triple. They're going to be buying 5x, because if they realize if they buy it in May, it'll be 50% cheaper than if they buy it in August or November. There's going to be a huge run, because I'm looking at it the same way. Things you buy now are always going to be cheaper than they will next month. Like, we're just in this point now where anything you buy, you're getting at a discount right now.
Right.
So that's my kind of projection, is moving out. And, I have a whole bunch of videos on how I think people might react, governments might react.
Right.
But what do you see for 2022 for the rest of it? Any timelines that you see moving out for awareness, people's behavior, governments, economy, anything?
Well, I can see a lot of things we probably don't want to talk about, but the things I do want to talk about is that I think that people are going to see what my wife is starting to see now. Anything that you buy now is going to be cheaper now than it will ever be. In fact, there's going to be some things that are available now that will not be available now. And I think what we're going to see is continuation of that. Okay. We're going to see less and less things that cost more and more. So I see prices just slowly increasing. I see fewer and fewer of the things that people want being available is in quantity. Okay. The prices are going to go up. The quantities available to buy are going to be down. And it's going to end up like my father-in-law said. Bless him, he's dead now. We asked him, well, what did you do during the Depression? And he said, I worked. He said, I had a lot of money actually during the Depression. He said, there was nothing to buy. There was nothing to buy. And I think that's where we're headed. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where there's nothing to buy. And if there is something to buy, it's going to be so expensive, we can't buy it. And I see that maybe, 20% more, 25% more this year than last year. I'm seeing a continual breakdown in our infrastructure of, being able to deliver food, this just in time stuff, the JIT thing, where, the grocery store, you go in the back of the grocery store, there's nothing back there. They're not stocking inventory in the back of a grocery store. It doesn't exist. Okay. That sucker comes in a truck, and the next day it's out on the shelves, and it's just in time. And so now the just in time is, I don't really know why I can't buy pasta anymore. Why it's off the shelf almost. There's none there. And the guy what if you go and talk to people that work there, they say, well, the truck just didn't arrive. The truck didn't arrive with the food. So there's no pasta out there. So what's causing that? Is it infrastructure?
I got an answer.
Yeah. Okay.
40% reduction in durum wheat production this year globally.
Yeah.
So the demand has far outstripped the supply. I mean, carryover stocks are long gone. It's like what they grow now for durum wheat is all they get. So they're, it's really hard to get accurate numbers because they don't want to put that kind of negative news out. But let's just say 40% global reduction in durum wheat this year. So if it's like that this last harvest season, and we're coming in with less fertilizers, less herbicides, you can almost forecast out that next year there's even going to be less durum wheat than there is this year, which was already 40% down. So knock another 10% off, let's say half. At that point, you really do get into a premium market where those durum wheat that you talked about in reference that are in the nice, pretty boxes and the harder pastas, different colored, more deeply rich colors from the grain that you would get in that kind of cellophane wrapped pasta. You can definitely see the coloration difference. It's all going to be premium pricing. So you either buy it at a higher price or you don't get it, but it's going to be, again, offered to the highest bidder, the premium price. And a lot of people are going to get priced out of the market. And if you can't get the, $5 couple pound of pasta in the regular cellophane, then where does that leave most people? Rice. Are we going to go back to the ancient grains, amaranth, spelt, millet, sorghum? Oh, wait, you can't really find that. It's not such a quote unquote commercial crop where you're just going in buying bags of millet. When's the last time you were able to go into a store and get a bag of spelt or a bag of millet?
Yeah.
Nah, it's harder to find. You can find it. It's not unfindable.
No, it's not at grocery stores much. Might find a little bag of it somewhere.
Yeah, like Costco had amaranth and organic amaranth. I think it was a 5-pound bag. You could do some microgreens with that, but those things are super, super tiny. I've done it also with chia seeds. You get this amazing carpet. You got to cut so tight. You barely even get the leaves off that. You got to leave a lot of. But
yep, that's amaranth.
Yeah, and chia seeds as well. They're so fine and so just really succulent, and you got to cut super fine. You got to have a really good knife to get the chia microgreens off the tray. But where do we go from here? Premium pricing and everything that's gone short already in terms of ag is going to probably continue the same trend line. So I just can't see a big increase in durum wheat next year unless the price goes absurd and then people switch crops and move into that. Because a lot of farmers are moving away from corn and soy. They're either going to take the prevent plant or they can't get the fertilizers to go in and do corn. So they're going to shift off to something else.
Right.
What would that be? I'm not sure. Sorghum takes a lot of fertilizer.
Yeah, it does.
Soybeans take a lot of fertilizer. So these farmers talking about switching crops and moving over, Brazil, the corn, I'm going to make a bold call here too. Corn production in Brazil is going to drop off a cliff because they're moving over to beans. Yep. They're moving to beans. So just the corn production in general, globally, I know a lot of it's used for ethanol. Okay, you could take that away, but the animal feed, we really need that. If you want to have any milk, if you want to have any chicken eggs or chicken on your plate, or you want to have some pig, you're going to need corn. That's a main, feed ingredient in there. Milk, need it. Baby infant formula, need that. Whey protein powders, need it. Do you want to have cheese? You need the grains to feed the cow to get the milk to produce those products. Without the corn this year, and a lot of farmers are going to follow in the Northern Hemisphere, they're not going to plant the corn. So there's going to be a massive corn reduction. soybeans are going to be reduced. So are we going to go to the bean planet? Is this going to be planet bean by the time we're into, because it doesn't take nearly the input? Is everybody going to switch over to beans? And then what? I mean, are our diets going to change that much into more of a black bean, pinto bean, cowpea, black-eyed pea diet where people are going to move over to that for proteins versus, and rice will still be pretty abundant instead of what we consider as those traditional soybeans, corn, that sort of thing. I don't know. I'm just forecasting out what Brazil did. I think the world's going to follow. Is going to be massive bean production and lack of corn production.
Yeah. Well, I'm seeing, the government or the power that be, I guess, whoever those folks are.
The pile of, what to be.
Yeah. Yeah. They're pushing, plant-based eating. I am a plant-based eater. Okay. I am a, almost 98, 95% vegan type of eater, but I did that for health reasons. I love meat. I had a heart attack and 5 bypasses, and I don't want to go back there. Okay. And if you want to go back there, you just eat tons of fat and meat and you'll end up back there. Okay. You need a balanced diet, and a lot of people don't. So I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot of protein from things like you just mentioned. Okay. As food, and it's going to be processed too. You're going to have your burger, your veggie whatever, breakfast, your veggie milk, your veggie, God knows what. Okay. And it's going to come from things like that are easy to grow. And, here in Texas, this year, we grow a lot of spring wheat. I guess they plant it in the fall and it comes up in spring. Well, yeah, and that's in West Texas this year. It came up and then it froze. There's been I see Canada going offline pretty soon. They had cold and drought and rain. I mean, they had it all, which is typical of a grand solar minimum. That's why people don't know what's happening. And then they'll say, "Oh, it's hot," or "Oh, it's been cold," or "Gee, it's been rainy," or it's been a drought. Well, yeah, that's what happens. That's what John Casey said it would happen. And of course, that's I guess John is still around, right?
I've been trying to contact him. I haven't had any success in the last couple of months.
I really miss him. I think he was a wonderful fellow, and I just loved listening to him. It's just good common sense guy. Engineer. So, but no, I think that's where it was going. You're right. South America, Brazil, and all that. They've had some really bad problems. And, I guess Australia doesn't even export wheat anymore. And, we've had, like you say, the Durham wheat problem. And, as things go crazier and crazier, the further north you are. And, I kind of wish we would have global warming. I'd take that any day over global cooling. Okay. And, we have been warm for, we live in, what is it, the Pleistocene ice age, and there's warm periods during it, and we've just coming out of that, and it was wonderful. We fed 8 billion people. You could grow food far, far north than you could 100, 200 years ago. So global warming's been great. Okay. And CO2 is plant food. I can imagine what your farm would look out there, David, if you could double your CO2 out there in the field. Wouldn't that be great?
Or triple it.
Oh golly, or triple it. Yeah, but they want to put $1 billion machines out there and suck it up and bury it so you can't use it. Which is
I'll take it. Just put that machine next to my place and just dump it over here.
Yeah, and dump it over in your farm, right? Yeah, that'd be great. So anyway, I don't know. I think the world's gone insane, and I think it's planned insanity. Okay, I don't think the world has really gone insane. I think it's packaged insanity. Okay. And we live in a world of change. And so the more the more insane you can make it, the more stress is put on people. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know one thing: we better get ready. I know that much.
I hope you got something out of our conversation here. I've been talking with Dennis DeLaurier over at TheGSMPrepper.com. Make sure you go over to the site, see what kind of information's there that's usable in your life and mine, and how do we, get ourselves more ready for these changes. Dennis, I think that's going to be a lot for people to absorb. I'm glad you came on today. And for me too, especially when I'm editing the videos, I learn more when I'm editing, because when I'm in the process of it, I'm trying to think of responses or how to, phrase something. So listening to it as a listener is a completely different experience. So I'll be taking notes myself as I'm editing through the videos here.